All right. Good afternoon and welcome to Wednesday Workshops with Whitney. I am going to be your host, Whitney. Thank you all for being here. Just getting this in order real quick. All right. Perfect. Okay. Great. All right. So during this week's Wednesday Workshop with Whitney, we're going to be discussing grief, exhaustion, hope, and healing. 2021 has started out rocky. A lot of people are grieving the loss of loved ones, jobs, school, and their old way of life. There's a sense of collective grief and exhaustion. Coping skills that once worked are no longer working. Join me to inspire hope and healing through discussion of grief, acceptance, and how to move forward. But before we begin that discussion, I'm going to ask my icebreaker question. And if you feel like participating, you can type into the chat box. And if you're unable to do the chat box, you can send me a text message. I'll put my number up here if you'd like to participate, because I always appreciate participation, but you never have to if you don't want to. All right. So my icebreaker question for today is, if you could give a piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be? So I'll say it again. If you could give a piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be? All right, so if anyone would like to share, that would be cool. I still have to think about my answer, so give us about a minute to think about it. If you could give a piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be? Okay. Oops. Oh, great. Thanks. Okay, so we have Modensi, who texted and she said, slow down, you're moving too fast. So that was her piece of advice. Thank you so much. Steve has go out more often and have fun. Awesome. I guess mine would be to not take life so seriously, especially when you're young, because you have a lot of time to have fun and not have a whole lot of responsibility. So enjoy that time and don't try to rush to grow up. Thank you. Awesome. Cool. So now we're going to move on to our main topic. I have two articles that I'm going to read and we'll kind of discuss as I'm reading them. So if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, please feel free to send me a text or do the chat box. That would be great. The two articles are titled, What You're Feeling is Grief by Neela Burton of the New York Magazine, and the other is 10 Strategies to Move Through Grief and Prepare for 2021 by Lori Katz, who is a PhD, and that was in Psychology Today. So we're going to start with what you're feeling is grief, and then after that, we'll do the 10 strategies to move through grief, and we're going to close out with a meditation. All right. What you're feeling is grief. With more than 500,000 dead and no clear end in sight, some have found tools for coping with loss and stress are no longer working. Stephanie Schroeder, a writer and peer support specialist, has been working 35 hours a week at the New York City homeless shelter for most of the pandemic. Schroeder spends her days up close with vulnerable populations, including homeless women with a lifetime of trauma and mental illness, she says, who are feeling some of the harshest effects of the virus. When her days are done, she returns home and tries to decompress by talking with her sister on FaceTime, listening to music, scrolling through social media, or eating dinner with her partner. But, she says, I do lie on the couch and stare at the ceiling a lot. These days, she's totally burnt out and experiencing a lot of secondary trauma. She's grateful for the privileges she has, but trying to get through the pandemic has proven challenging. Nearly a year into it, I'm not sure that what I can do to feel good. All my reserves are depleted, she says. She doesn't know who to ask for help or what kind of help to ask for, which I think is very interesting because we're kind of raised to come up with these different coping skills or things that you can do to make yourself feel better from when we're younger. And now that we've had to be using these tools so often, it would make sense for them to not work as well as they used to. But Schroeder, who has bipolar disorder, has taken steps to care for her mental health before. Pandemic grief is something different. I've been to therapy for decades and know very well how to ask for the help I need. I just don't think the help exists. More than 500,000 people in the U.S. have died from COVID-19, mothers, fathers, and grandparents, friends, and neighbors. That's on top of the jobs, homes, and school days, as well as the favorite restaurants, music venues, and stores that have been lost or shuttered in the economic fallout. Like Schroeder, some have arrived at a new part of the pandemic where the tools previously used to cope with the unprecedented loss and stress no longer seem to work. Instead, many Americans are reaching a new level of profound collective grief for those lost and for an entire way of life that appears increasingly unlikely to resume as it once was. So this article does talk a lot about the grief, which I think is super important to talk about. And there is some parts that are kind of hopeful, but that's why I have the second article where we can go through more tips to work through, process grief and kind of cope with what we have to continue going through. So it's not all negative. All right. And the losses keep coming. COVID-19 deaths continue to climb, although at a slower pace, and distribution of the new vaccines, a rare flash of hope during this dire time, has been mirrored by logistical issues. Healthcare workers are increasingly leaving their jobs due to fear and a lack of support. Grocery workers are no longer getting hazard pay and don't feel protected from the virus while on the job. Teachers are being stretched to their limits. People are losing their homes. An estimated 30 million Americans could face eviction if the moratoriums expire. Many don't know when they'll be able to have secure housing ever again. Well, that is a lot. I definitely understand, especially with the vaccines. I wish that they had more of a federal way of distribution, I guess, but I feel like it's kind of the same as it was with testing, where each state kind of gets to decide how they want to do it. And I read an article that talked about how getting an appointment for a vaccine was like getting a concert ticket to Coachella, which means that you're waiting till that time that they start selling the tickets or scheduling the vaccines. And so many people are going online all at once that sometimes the system kind of breaks down. And most of the time you don't get your ticket or you don't get to schedule your appointment. And what's so unfortunate is that a lot of older people that might not be as tech savvy are really struggling. So I think that it's important to note that It's just unfortunate. But if you need help finding a vaccine appointment, feel free to reach out to your HHCD office. You can reach out to me, Steve. There's a lot of us here to help you get through this. So, Steve said, if you're struggling with paying rent, make sure you contact your HHCD office. Absolutely. We're going to be helping with rental applications. We have some programs, and some programs are coming too. So, and also we're still helping with utility assistance applications. Cool. Nick Francis, a filmmaker, says he didn't experience severe mental health issues before the pandemic. But in August 2020, when Francis was quarantining at home alone in Oakland, California, he lost one of his closest friends just before Christmas. And then after Christmas, his grandfather died. Neither death was caused by the coronavirus. However, the ability to mourn with others in his community has hit him harder than he could have imagined. The loss and his continued isolation from others have left him feeling like some sort of golem, he says, a creature designed to continue to function, continue to write, create, to live, but each part slowly replaced with something artificial and mechanical until there's nothing left but engine and gears. So that's kind of sad, but it makes sense, because when you go through crisis or when you're grieving, you have to keep going. So in order to make yourself keep going, sometimes it does feel like you're a machine, because you don't want to become overly emotional, because that can be exhausting on its own. Francis is not alone. The 2020 Stress in America survey, conducted by Harris Poll on behalf of the American Psychological Association, found that 19% of nearly 3,500 adult respondents said that their mental health was worse than that at the same time last year. And this poll was conducted between August 4th and the 26th of 2020. And I think that that's obvious, because 2019 and 2020 were very different. And of course, people were struggling before, but this was just, a catastrophe. And like Schroeder, 60% said the number of issues American faces was overwhelming to them. Mourning the death of a loved one or being thrown into an economic uncertainty is doubly difficult when people are forced to reckon with it alone. But even the small things can have a crushing cumulative effect on mental health, as many have had to give up parts of their lives that once seemed guaranteed, such as going to a friend's house, eating in a restaurant, or even taking an unmasked walk. I know that I never thought of having to wear a mask all over the place. I actually feel fortunate that we have them to wear, but it is definitely uncomfortable and difficult to breathe in a mask. And I feel sorry for people that have breathing issues or health issues that already make it difficult to breathe. Okay. Laura Cinco, a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Pennsylvania and a mental health nurse with expertise in trauma recovery, told Vox that the grief around COVID-19 has a far bigger footprint than we might think. She cited a study that was published by the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science in July of last year of 2020, which estimated that for every one death from COVID-19, it will leave approximately 9 people bereaved. So for every one person who passes, it affects at least 9 people to an extent of their grieving and suffering because this person is no longer there. But Cinco adds, the effects extend beyond the number of lives lost. What about the other things we grieve for? The deaths unrelated to COVID, like the person talking earlier where he lost his friend and his grandfather, and neither of them were due to COVID. However, because of COVID, he wasn't able to maybe fly where the rest of his family is or go to a funeral with a bunch of people. So that makes it very difficult. The missed milestones with family and friends. The lack of accountability from systems supposedly put in place to protect us, she asks. The layers of cultural trauma we experience on top of our personal losses can feel all-consuming. We are isolated. We are lonely, and we are all in some way grieving. Many of us try to save each other and try to save ourselves. People gathered in parks 6 feet away from each other, longing to embrace or maybe even high five, but having to be content with just seeing a stranger's face or a masked face, but just not being alone. Some baked bread, cooked, cleaned, crocheted, and zoomed to the point of exhaustion. Thank you all for being here, though, even though I know it's a Zoom. Others refused to wear masks and continued to live their lives normally, whether out of denial, boredom, or a lack of resources to take these steps, which I know was very, very frustrating. A year later, not much has changed. Well, it has, and it is changing, but it's very slow. Meanwhile, federal and local governments have failed to close down businesses and large gatherings and provide economic support or even sound medical advice. And I also want to say this is an article I'm reading, so don't think that these are my opinions. The COVID-19 death toll in the U.S. is more than 100,000 people higher than it was when I started working on this story just weeks ago. So that, I don't know when this article exactly came out, but if you think about it, 100,000 more people, maybe in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. That number is unfathomable to me. The desensitization I feel from the constant death is also unfathomable. Death has also made me desensitized to it. It is important to know that despite the government's rampant neglect, there are people doing good work, and we need to try to hold on to hope. I agree. Some people in politics, not so much. Other people, better. I think it's kind of a spectrum in general. Collectively, we are living in a time of deep tragedy, but grief can teach us how incredible our capacity to love is, says Cinco. We must hold space for ourselves and connect with those around us during these times of uncertainty, even as our resilience rapidly fades. I am trying not to succumb to that, says Francis. Instead, he says he is trying to relearn how to live. We're learning how to live. I think that's a very interesting concept. For the young, particularly members of Gen Z, the new grief threatens to consume formative years. The Stress in America survey found that 34% of 18 to 24-year-olds said their mental health has gotten worse, nearly double the overall percentage of respondents who said the same. Deborah is missing her first year of college due to the pandemic and says the crushing loneliness has taken an incredible toll. I don't want to self-diagnose because apparently people don't like that very much, but I think I may be depressed, she says. Despite her symptoms, Deborah hasn't been able to access mental health resources. She simply can't afford it, and she simply doesn't want to add an extra expense for her parents. Well, I will tell you that if you are experiencing any depression or other feelings, we do have a helpline, and reach out to Wholesome Human Capital Development because we're here to provide resources. Even if you don't have health insurance, you can get free care. So if Deborah's watching this, you can get help even if you don't have the money to pay for it. COVID-19 has led to a rise in therapy alternatives, including online programs, as people seek to address the new grief. Rich Berhansel, a senior managing director at Accenture, who leads the company's global health practice, says younger consumers, both millennials and Gen Z, are especially open to engage in virtual behavioral health services. But even some of the least expensive online therapy programs can still cost between $65 and $150 a session, an insurmountable expense for many young and or marginalized people. And that would definitely be kind of private practice type therapy. So there are therapies that health insurance can cover and not having it. Oh, great. Thank you, Steve. Steve wrote down the helpline phone number. If you're experiencing any feelings of depression or uncertainty, or you just feel like you need someone to talk to or you need some resources, you can give the helpline a number, a call at 312-858-7420. And this line is free. All right. Kaylin Kennedy, a doctoral candidate at Marquette University and a clinical therapist who specializes in pediatric psychology, told Voice that one of the most prominent characteristics of this new stage of grief is that the we're all in this together feeling is gone, having been replaced by desensitization. And if you don't know what desensitization means, I have a hard time pronouncing it. It's basically like you've experienced something tragic, possibly, or have seen a lot of violence so much that you kind of have grown accustomed to it as something normal. Even if it's not normal, you're kind of like, oh, well, that happens. I'm going to keep going. Combined with the feeling that many people are living their lives as though everything is back to normal, traveling, eating out, and even going to clubs. It makes your distress and grief more individual than collective, Kennedy says. When grief feels individual, that can present as more severe depression. It doesn't help, Kennedy adds, that the government speaks about the pandemic in a way that makes us feel like it's our responsibility to fix it ourselves. But the government isn't really doing anything but blaming us. I think that's an interesting point to get to because with the vaccines, with the testing, with a lot of different things, it wasn't this, the government didn't really come together. It was like, that state can do what that state wants, and that state can do what that state wants. And that made it, like she's saying in a way, like it more individualized grief. And there wasn't any sort of form of fairness at all. So the result is a culture of shame, only amplified on social media, that has strained or even ended relationships, friendships, and family relations. But how long were people going to stay at home, sitting in their grief, before they decided to come out, regardless of the risks? That's a good point. It's this uneven experience of this pandemic that makes even excellent news, like the approval of the COVID-19 vaccines, feel fraught. Questions of priority of distribution feel overcast by grief and uncertainty and injustice. Just like when, when you were getting a test for COVID, the free test, you'd have to wait about 3 days to get your results. If you wanted to pay about between $100 and $200, you could get it instantly. So if people are working their butts off, such as grocery workers, they don't have that type of income to just get this test for that day. So it kind of put them in a situation where, okay, well, let me wait. I got to wait those 3 days. I got to take off work those 3 days. I can't afford to take off those 3 days. So the unevenness of medical and testing and all different types of things really put people in hard situations where it was like, maybe I have it and maybe I'm going to expose other people to it, but maybe that's better than not being able to put food on the table. And I'm not saying that's how I feel, but those were situations that people really had to think about. And how will it feel when one person in a household or a friend group gets a vaccine and others don't? What will that do to end the loneliness and fear when only one of your loved ones is protected? And with most of us not receiving the vaccine for many months in which we must remain isolated, focused on surviving, how long will it take before we get some semblance of our lives back? Former acting U.S. Surgeon General Kenneth Morescu, an early advocate for exercise as a form of self-care and health management during the pandemic, tells Vox, as a scientist, he views the vaccine as fabulous life-saving news. But he acknowledges that many might still feel despair and exhaustion. My wife, myself, and our teenage daughter are feeling exactly the same sense of exhaustion. How long do we have to be here practicing these isolation techniques, he says. Cinco says we need policies that address our grief, including how to safely memorialize our dead, while we need to give ourselves permission to mourn our losses. We also need policies to support healthy processing to avoid a rise in disenfranchised grief, she said. This means universal paid bereavement time, socially distanced and virtual community mental health support, and careful contact tracing and consultation with public health experts as we adapt the way we gather to celebrate the life lived of those we have lost. If our grief is collective, our healing needs to be collective, Cormier says. Social media can be a way of doing it, but we need collective rituals and support. I wake up every day and ask myself that question, how long? Some days, the self-care activities I started in March, like yoga and dressing up in nice outfits with nowhere to go, still work, and I'm full of joy. But those days are fewer and fewer, and surviving the pandemic has started to feel like, I don't know what that means, hopeless and painful. I miss my friends so much it hurts, and I cry more than I used to. Being resilient is work, says Morescu. Attempting to survive COVID-19 is a physical and mental stressor on our bodies and our psyches. Over the last 9 months, we have not really seen the light at the end of the tunnel, he adds, but with vaccine on its way, he urges people to hang in there and have hope. It's already reaching some who need it the most. At the homeless shelter where Schroeder works, both residents and workers are eligible to receive the vaccine. She already has an appointment. And there's more reason for hope. On January 28th, the New York Times reported that coronavirus cases have fallen by 35% over the past 3 weeks in the U.S., the sharpest decline we've ever seen. But upon hearing this news, Jennifer Nuzzo, an epidemiologist at the Johns Hopkins University, told the New York Times, I like the trends we're seeing, and I'm personally hopeful that things are going to get better, but there are a number of things that could also go wrong. It's not surprising that amid the new grief, people have had a hard time feeling joy when they hear even hopeful news. Kennedy says, we've been giving so many promises that have been taken back. We've improved things only for them to get worse. It makes people less likely to trust. Cormier says there are positive things we can grasp. Grief brings sorrow, but it also brings gifts. We can find out something about our inner sense of strength that we didn't know that we had, or gain resources we didn't know we had access to before. As we look at what we've lost, at the same time, we can try to identify, are there things that we've actually gained? Are there ways in which we've actually grown? And that answer, Cormier points out, is different for everyone. Grief is a spectrum, and so is hope. All right, so that was the first article. The second one's much shorter. But I liked it because it felt really authentic how people were feeling. And it has been a strange kind of 2021, in my opinion, because we had so much hope that 2021 was just going to suddenly be, back to normal or a lot better. And that's just, unfortunately, not how I like to be an optimist as much as I can. So, we're going to talk about the 10 strategies to move through grief and prepare for 2021. There are many ways to grieve. If you are tired, give yourself permission to rest. You don't have to do everything like you usually do. It is normal to feel tired, angry, sad, or numb. We can't undo last year, so we have a couple of choices. We can, 1, ignore or avoid the pain, including hurts or disappointments from the past. 2, resist it, or 3, live through it. So number 1, ignoring is initially a highly attractive option because it allows you to temporarily push away discomfort and pain. You can immerse yourself in work, television, video games, alcohol, or food, but for a moment you can forget it. We have all done this before, and it does work for a while, but this is only a temporary strategy. Eventually, the flimsy Band-Aid falls off, and you're still left with the wound. So, distraction techniques is kind of what they're talking about, can work in the short term if you're going through something and you're just suddenly really anxious and you need to work through it. It can be good to distract yourself, but like they said, in the long run, if you have grief or if you have trauma, you have to work through it. 2, avoidance doesn't heal the wound, but ironically, acting prolongs the pain. Or it actually prolongs the pain. Continuing with avoidance eventually leads to secondary problems compounding the pain. Now you have 2 issues, what you used for avoidance and the original issue. Regardless of whether it sounds scary, you know it serves you best to find another strategy. Resisting is also a common experience. No, that should not have happened. It's unfair, not right, unthinkable, unacceptable, no. And lastly, you may wake up every morning thinking about the injustice with disbelief. It is shocking. Your body cannot stomach it. Your mind cannot grasp it. Where does the anger go? It just swirls around inside you, impeding your sleep, giving you chronic pain from tense muscles and upsetting those around you. Lashing out at others doesn't solve it. You have every right to be angry, and yet you also know this is not how you want to live your life. Again, you know it serves you best to find another strategy. Ultimately, what we have left is the option to live through it. This means grieving the losses, crying, breathing, and releasing. Inhaling in, exhaling out deep, slow breaths. At first, this may release a flood of pent-up emotion. It's because you're holding in tension in your chest. It gets easier as you continue to practice breathing. And also, I had a therapist that always said you can't have a breakthrough without a breakdown. So get emotional, let it out. It actually makes you feel better afterwards, because if we're just dealing with the day-to-day and avoiding, we have all of this inside and it needs to come out. In the process, offer yourself comfort, such as wrapping a cozy blanket around your shoulders. Allow yourself to shudder and shake. Let it out. I know it's intensely painful. I reassure you that the waves do become less frequent over time. Sometimes we get stuck searching for a way to make sense of something that does not make sense, at least not from a personal perspective. Maybe from a bigger perspective, there is some kind of purpose, but regardless, it is what happened. I do like to believe that for every life experience, we gain wisdom. You may not see it at this moment, but it could make sense to you in years to come. And on that note, she offers some helpful strategies to live through grief. And if anyone has any skills or tips to work through grief, feel free to share. So, 1, visualize releasing the hurt, pain, and injustice. Give your pain an image. Maybe surround the pain in a golden light and see it float away. Imagine yourself releasing any and all negativity. See it evaporating and floating up to the heavens. As you release the past, you free yourself to be open to the present and future. If you've experienced the loss of a loved one, you can visualize sending love and surrounding him or her in a loving golden light. I think that's great. Visualization can be super beneficial, and actually that's what we're going to be doing next. Number 2, focus on the breath. Inhaling, opening to life. Exhaling, releasing all that no longer serves you. In this way, the breath itself becomes a metaphor for living life. It is a constant reminder to be present in this very moment. Bring your attention to this breath, a brand new experience, something you have not experienced before. It can also be helpful to go outside and breathe fresh air. And on that note, I did read that the most helpful time to go outside and be in the sun is in the morning, because for some reason, I don't know exactly, but it helps. So even if you go outside for a couple minutes, it's kind of amazing how much it can help. 3, rest, grieve. Grief by its very nature will make you tired. So take the time to rest. Resting is the body's way to restore and heal. It helps our immune system and digestion. Rest also helps your brain. Hydrate. Drinking water is one of the very best ways to support your mind and body. It helps move everything through and out the body, including the breath, food, toxins, and emotions. You will feel better when you are hydrated. A trick to remember how much water to drink is roughly half your weight in ounces per day. Caffeinated drinks do not count, as in fact the caffeine can dehydrate you. I can't tell you enough. Drink water. You're probably never drinking enough, so just keep drinking it because it will make you feel better. Stretch. Move your body. Stretch your muscles. Go for a walk. Dance. Wiggle. Raise your arms. It will help improve your mind and circulation, or your mood. Okay. All right. Laugh. Nothing is better than a good laugh to release tension and improve your mood. And when you're grieving or not feeling happy, it's hard to think about how to laugh. So why don't you put on a movie or a TV show that used to make you laugh? Even if it doesn't now, you might feel a little bit better. Detox. Think about the things that you may be doing that add a toxic burden on your health, such as smoking, alcohol, caffeine, junk foods, and soda. Everyone knows these are not healthy. Maybe now is a good time to consider reducing or even quitting. Set some goals. What would you like to accomplish in 2021, or even this month, or the next couple months? Some people like to make a vision board with pictures of things they want to create in their lives. I love that. Also, if you want more information on how to set short-term realistic goals, that was one of our Wednesday workshops recently. So check out that in our videos. 9, visualize good things coming to you. Open yourself to receiving unexpected abundance in multiple areas of your life. Create a space for opportunities to show up. Welcome joy and happiness as frequent guests in your home. And 10, connect with others. Talk, share, laugh, or spend some time with someone. You are not alone. Find ways to reach out and connect with others or do something to help someone else, the community, and or the planet. We are almost through this pandemic. Appreciate the good things in your life, breathe, and stay present. Now is a good time to practice safe and healthy habits, compassion towards yourself and others, and unwavering hope. I do believe it will get better soon. May you heal and welcome prosperity and joy in 2021. So I think those were some great coping skills in general. All right. And lastly, I'm going to walk us or guide us through a visualization exercise, which I think was great because that was number 1 on ways to grieve. So the exercise that I'm going to read is from the Virtual Chronic Disease Self-Management Program that Steve and I are both in. If you're interested in learning how to live your life happier and healthier with a chronic condition, contact your HHCD office because we're going to be providing a class. All right, so get comfortable. If you're sitting, try to straighten your back, put your feet flat on the floor, and you can put your hands on your legs or to your side, whatever more comfortable. And if you're comfortable, you can also close your eyes, but you don't have to. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply 3 times. In through your nose and all the way to your abdomen. And then slowly out through pursed lips. Oh, wait, this is not, okay, sorry. This is not what I was looking for. Let's see if I can find it real quick. I mean, that was the right beginning. Oh, there we go. I got it. Okay. All right. Here we go. You're giving yourself some time now to quiet your mind and body. Allow yourself to settle comfortably wherever you are right now. If you wish, you can close your eyes. Breathe in deeply through your nose, expanding your abdomen and filling your lungs. And pursing your lips, exhale through your mouth slowly and completely, allowing your body to sink heavily into the surface beneath you. And once again, breathe in through your nose and all the way down to your abdomen. And let the breath out slowly through pursed lips. Letting go of tension. Letting go of anything that's on your mind right now. And allowing yourself to be present in this moment. Imagine yourself walking along a peaceful, old country road. The sun is gently warming your back. The birds are singing. The air is calm and fragrant. No need to hurry. You notice your walking is relaxed and easy. As you walk along the way, taking in your surroundings, you come across an old gate. It looks inviting, and you decide to take the path through the gate. The gate creaks as you open it and go through. You find yourself in an old, overgrown garden. Flowers are growing where they have seated themselves, vines climbing over a fallen tree. Soft green wild grasses, shade trees. You notice yourself breathing deeply, smelling the flowers. Listen to the birds and insects, feeling a gentle breeze cool against your skin. All of your senses are alive and responding with pleasure to this peaceful time and place. When you're ready to move on, you leisurely follow a path out behind the garden, eventually coming to a more wooded area. As you enter this area, your eyes find the trees and plant life restful. The sunlight is filtered through the leaves. The air feels mild and a little cooler. You savor the fragrance of trees and earth and gradually become aware of the nearby stream. Pausing, you allow yourself to take in the sights and sounds, breathing in the cool and fragrant air several times. And with each breath, you notice how refreshed you are feeling. Continuing along the path for a while, you come to the stream. It's clear and clean, and it flows and tumbles over the rocks and some fallen logs. You follow the path easily along the creek for a way, and after a while, you come out into a sunlit clearing where you discover a small waterfall emptying into a quiet pool of water. You find a comfortable place to sit for a while, a perfect niche where you can feel completely relaxed. You feel good as you allow yourself to just enjoy the warmth and solitude of this peaceful place. After a while, you become aware that it's time to return. You arise and walk back down the path in a relaxed and comfortable way through the cool, fragrant trees out into the sun-drenched, overgrown garden. One last smell of the flowers and out the creaky gate. You will leave this country retreat for now and return down the road. You notice you feel calm and rested. You feel grateful and remind yourself that you can visit this special place whenever you wish to take some time to refresh yourself and renew your energy. And now, preparing to bring this period of relaxation to a close, you may want to take a moment to picture yourself carrying this experience of calm and refreshment with you in the ordinary activities of your life. And when you are ready, take a deep breath and open your eyes. So, I love that one. I don't know. I think more than any of the other, breathing exercises, I really felt like that one relaxed me. I don't know if anyone else has any opinions. This was a long episode. I'm so glad you all came. I hope that there were some helpful tips, and I hope that you all have a wonderful day. All right. Bye-bye.